The autumn morning started like any other at Kensington Palace. Catherine woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside her window. The golden sunlight streamed through the heavy curtains, painting warm patterns on the bedroom floor. She stretched her arms and looked over at William, who was still sleeping peacefully beside her. His face looked calm and relaxed, without the weight of royal duties that usually showed in his expression during the day. Catherine smiled softly and quietly slipped out of bed. She wrapped her silk robe around herself and walked to the window. The palace gardens looked beautiful in the morning light. The autumn leaves were turning golden and red, creating a carpet of colors across the ground. She loved these quiet moments before the day began, before the meetings and official duties took over their lives. She could hear George, Charlotte, and Louis getting ready for school in their rooms down the hall. Their voices, mixed with the sounds of their nanny helping them with breakfast. Catherine felt a warm feeling in her heart as she listened to her children laughing together. These were the moments that made all the royal responsibilities worth it. William stirred in bed and opened his eyes. He saw Catherine standing by the window and smiled. "Good morning, my love," he said in his deep, gentle voice. Catherine turned around and walked back to the bed. She sat down beside him and brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. "Good morning," she whispered back. "The children are getting ready for school. I think Louis is having trouble with his tie again." William chuckled softly. Their youngest son always struggled with getting dressed for school, but he was too proud to ask for help most days. They had planned a quiet day together after the children left for school. Catherine had some charity work to review, and William had a few meetings with his staff. It was supposed to be a normal, peaceful day. Neither of them knew that everything was about to change forever. The phone rang just as William was getting out of bed. It was his private secretary calling with the morning schedule. Catherine went to check on the children while William took the call. She helped Louis with his tie and gave each of her children a kiss on the forehead before they left with their security team. When Catherine returned to their bedroom, William was sitting on the edge of the bed with a strange look on his face. The phone was still in his hand, but the call had ended. His skin looked pale, and his eyes had a distant expression that Catherine had never seen before. "William, what is wrong?" Catherine asked, feeling her heart start to beat faster. Something in his expression made her stomach feel tight with worry. She sat down beside him and put her hand on his shoulder. William looked at her with eyes that seemed to be struggling to focus. "That was Dr. Harrison," he said quietly. Dr. Harrison was their family doctor, a man they had trusted for years. "He needs to see us both immediately," he said. "It is urgent and cannot wait." Catherine felt the blood drain from her face. Dr. Harrison never called unless something was seriously wrong. Just 2 weeks ago, she had gone for her regular health check. She had felt perfectly fine, and the doctor had said he would call with the results. She had not thought about it much since then. "Did he say what it was about?" Catherine asked, though part of her already knew. Her voice sounded small and scared, not like her usual confident tone. William shook his head. "He said he needed to speak with us in person. We'll be here in an hour." William reached for Catherine's hand and held it tightly. His hand felt cold and slightly shaky. The next hour felt like the longest time of Catherine's life. She tried to keep busy by organizing some papers on her desk, but she could not concentrate on anything. Her mind kept racing with possibilities, each one worse than the last. William paced around their private sitting room, checking his watch. Every few minutes, they barely spoke during that hour. Both of them knew that talking about their fears would only make them feel worse. Instead, they stayed close to each other, drawing comfort from the simple presence of their partner. When Dr. Harrison arrived, he looked more serious than Catherine had ever seen him. He was usually a cheerful man who made jokes to help his patients feel comfortable. But today, his face was grave, and he could not meet their eyes directly. They sat together on the sofa in their private sitting room. Dr. Harrison took a chair across from them and placed a manila folder on the coffee table. Catherine stared at that folder as if it contained all the secrets of the universe. She knew that whatever was inside would change their lives forever. "Your Royal Highnesses," Dr. Harrison began, his voice gentle but serious, "I am afraid I have some very difficult news to share with you about the test results from Catherine's recent examination." Catherine felt William's hand tighten around hers. She could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. The room suddenly felt very small and very quiet. Dr. Harrison opened the folder and looked down at the papers inside. When he looked up, again, his eyes were filled with sympathy.
Catherine, the tests have shown that you have a very serious condition. Cancer has already spread, and we need to begin treatment immediately if we are going to fight this.
The word cancer hit Catherine like a physical blow. She felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room. The world seemed to tilt sideways, and for a moment she thought she might faint. William's grip on her hand was the only thing that kept her grounded in reality. She looked at William and saw her own shock and fear reflected in his eyes. His face had gone completely white, and his mouth was slightly open, as if he wanted to speak, but could not find any words. Dr. Harrison continued, talking about treatment options and specialists, but Catherine could barely hear him. All she could think about were her children. George, Charlotte, and Louis were at school right now, completely unaware that their mother's life had just been turned upside down. How would she tell them? How would she explain something that she did not even understand herself, as Dr. Harrison finished explaining the medical details? Catherine realized that this morning had been the last normal morning of her life. From now on, every day would be about fighting, about treatments, about uncertainty. The simple joy of watching the sunrise and listening to her children laugh would now be colored by this terrible knowledge. William finally found his voice. "What are our options?" he asked quietly. Catherine was grateful that he could speak because she still felt like her voice had disappeared completely. The conversation that followed would replay in Catherine's mind for months to come. But in that moment, all she could think about was how much she loved her family and how desperately she wanted to stay with them. After Dr. Harrison left, Catherine and William sat in complete silence for what felt like hours. The medical folder remained on the coffee table between them, its contents now burned into their memories forever. Catherine stared at her hands in her lap, watching as tears fell onto her wedding ring. The diamond that had once symbolized their bright future now seemed to mock her with its sparkle. William had not moved from his position beside her on the sofa. His arm was around her shoulders, but Catherine could feel the tension in his body. She knew he was trying to be strong for her, just as she was trying to be strong for him. But inside she felt like she was falling apart piece by piece. "We need to tell the children," Catherine whispered finally. Her voice sounded strange and hoarse from crying. The thought of seeing the confusion and fear in her children's eyes made her stomach twist with pain. William took a deep breath. "Not yet," he said softly. "Let us understand everything first. Let us meet with the specialists and know exactly what we are dealing with before we say anything to them." Catherine nodded, but part of her disagreed. She had always believed in being honest with George, Charlotte, and Louis. They were smart, children who could sense when something was wrong. She worried that keeping this secret might make things worse for them later. The sound of car doors closing outside made them both look toward the window. The children were coming home from school. Catherine quickly wiped her eyes and tried to compose herself. She looked at William, and he gave her a small, encouraging smile. Even in this moment of crisis, he was trying to take care of her. George was the first one through the door, his school bag dragging behind him. He was 11 years old now and starting to look more like William every day. Charlotte came in next, chattering about something that had happened in her art class. Louis bounded in last, his shirt already untucked and his hair messy from playing. During lunch break, "Mummy, Daddy," Louis called out as he ran toward them. Catherine opened her arms and caught him in a hug, breathing in the sweet scent of his hair. For a moment, holding her youngest child made everything else disappear. This was what mattered. This was what she was fighting for. Charlotte noticed something was different right away. She had always been the most perceptive of their 3 children. "Mummy, are you feeling all right?" she asked, studying Catherine's face with concern. "Your eyes look red." Catherine felt her heart squeeze at her daughter's caring observation. Charlotte was only 9 years old, but she had such a kind and worried nature. "I am just a little tired, sweetheart," Catherine managed to say. "How was school today?" The children launched into stories about their day, and Catherine tried her best to listen and respond normally. but she found it difficult to concentrate on their words. Every time she looked at one of their faces, she thought about how this news would affect them. Would they understand? Would they be scared? Would they blame themselves somehow? William seemed to be having the same struggle. Smiled and nodded at the right moments, but Catherine could see the distraction in his eyes. When George asked him about plans for the weekend, William had to ask him to repeat the question. During dinner, Catherine barely touched her food. The chef had prepared her favorite meal, but everything tasted like cardboard in her mouth. She watched her children eat and laugh together, trying to memorize every detail of this normal family moment. She did not know when they would have another evening like this one. After the children went to bed, Catherine and William found themselves alone again with the weight of their secret. They went up to their bedroom, but neither of them was ready to sleep. Catherine sat at her dressing table and slowly brushed her hair, the same routine she had followed for years. But tonight, she found herself studying her reflection more carefully. She looked the same as she had that morning, but now she knew that her body was betraying her. The woman in the mirror looked healthy and strong, but appearances were lying. Catherine touched her cheek and wondered how long it would be before the treatments changed the way she looked. William appeared in the mirror behind her. He placed his hands on her shoulders and met her eyes in the reflection. "We will get through this," he said quietly. "We will fight this together, and we will win." Catherine wanted to believe him. She wanted to feel the confidence that usually came with his words. But fear had settled deep in her chest, making it hard to breathe properly. "What if we do not win?" she whispered. "What if I leave you alone with the children?" Oh, William turned her chair around so she was facing him directly. He knelt down in front of her and took her hands in his. "Do not talk like that," he said firmly. "You are the strongest person I know. You have survived royal protocols, public scrutiny, and 3 difficult pregnancies. You can survive this too." Catherine looked into his eyes and saw her own fear reflected there, despite his brave words. She realized that he was just as terrified as she was, but he was hiding it to protect her. This made her love him even more, but it also made her feel guilty. She did not want him to carry this burden alone. "I am scared, William," she admitted. "I am scared of the pain. I am scared of what this will do to our family. I am scared that I will not be here to see the children grow up." William pulled her into his arms, and they held each other tightly. Catherine could feel his tears on her shoulder, and she knew that he was finally allowing himself to feel the full weight of what they were facing. They cried together quietly, trying not to wake the children sleeping down the hall. "I cannot imagine my life without you," William whispered into her hair. "You are everything to me. You are the heart of our family." Catherine pulled back to look at his face. His eyes were red from crying, and he looked younger somehow, like the shy prince she had fallen in love with at university. "I do not want to leave you," she said. "I want to grow old with you. I want to see our children get married and have children of their own." They talked deep into the night about their hopes and fears. They made plans for Catherine's treatment and discussed how they would tell their families and the public. But mostly, they just held each other and tried to absorb the reality of what was happening to them. As dawn began to break outside their window, Catherine realized that something had changed between them during this long, dark night. Their love had always been strong, but now it had become something even deeper. They were no longer just husband and wife, or even just partners in royal duty. They had become fellow soldiers preparing for the biggest battle of their lives. The morning light brought with it the knowledge that they could not hide from this diagnosis any longer. Soon, they would have to start making phone calls and setting up appointments. They would have to tell their families and figure out how to manage Catherine's royal duties during treatment. The peaceful bubble of their private grief was about to burst. But for these last few moments of quiet, they simply held each other and gathered strength for whatever was coming next. The decision to tell the children came sooner than Catherine and William had planned. It was Charlotte who forced their hand, 3 days after the diagnosis. She had been watching her parents carefully, noticing every whispered conversation that stopped when she entered a room, every phone call that sent them to private corners of the palace. Catherine was in the garden with Louis, helping him build a fort out of fallen autumn leaves, when Charlotte approached them. Her serious expression reminded Catherine so much of William when he was thinking deeply about something important. "Mummy," Charlotte said quietly, "I know something is wrong. George knows too. We have been talking about it." She paused and looked directly into Catherine's eyes. "Are you and Daddy getting divorced?" The innocent question hit Catherine like a punch to the chest. She realized that in trying to protect her children from the truth, she had created space for their imaginations to fill with even worse possibilities. She looked at her daughter's worried face and knew that the time for secrets had ended. "No, sweetheart," Catherine said gently, pulling Charlotte down to sit beside her in the leaves. "Daddy and I are not getting divorced. We love each other very much, and we love you children more than anything in the world." Louis looked up from his fort, sensing the serious tone in his mother's voice. At 6 years old, he was still young. Enough to be easily distracted, but he was also smart enough to know when the adults around him were upset. "Then what is wrong?" Charlotte pressed. "You have been crying, and Daddy looks sad all the time now. The staff are acting strange too. Mrs. Peterson actually started crying yesterday when she was helping me with my homework." Catherine felt tears starting to form in her eyes again. She had not realized that their grief was so obvious to everyone around them. She thought about William, who was in meetings with palace officials, discussing how to handle the public announcement of her diagnosis. They had agreed that she would talk to the children while he dealt with the practical matters. "Where is George?" Catherine asked. "I think we should all talk together about this." Charlotte called for her older brother, who appeared from behind a nearby tree. Catherine realized he had been listening to their conversation, probably trying to decide whether he should join them or give them privacy. At 11, George was beginning to understand the complicated balance between being a child and being a future king. "Come sit with us, George," Catherine said, patting the ground beside her. "I need to tell all of you something very important." The three children arranged themselves around their mother. Louis immediately climbed into her lap, while Charlotte and George sat close enough to touch her arms. Catherine looked at their trusting faces and felt her heart breaking all over again. "You are right that something is wrong," Catherine began slowly. "A few days ago, I went to see our doctor for some tests. The tests showed that I have an illness called cancer." She watched as confusion and fear flickered across their faces. George had heard the word before and seemed to understand its seriousness. Charlotte looked puzzled, while Louis just stared at his mother with wide eyes. "What does that mean?" Charlotte asked in a small voice. Catherine had practiced this explanation in her mind dozens of times. But now that the moment was here, the words felt clumsy and inadequate. "It means that some cells in my body are not working properly, and they are making me sick. The doctors are going to give me special medicine to help fight the bad cells." "Are you going to die?" George asked quietly. His voice was steady, but Catherine could see the terror in his eyes. She realized that her eldest son was already thinking about what this might mean for his future responsibilities. "I am going to fight very hard to get better," Catherine said, choosing her words carefully. "The doctors believe that the medicine will help me. But I wanted you to know what was happening because you might notice that I look different or feel tired during my treatment." Louis suddenly wrapped his arms around Catherine's neck and held her tightly. "I do not want you to be sick, Mummy," he whispered into her ear. His small body was trembling against hers. Charlotte began to cry quietly.
"Is it because of something?"
"We did," she asked. "Did we make you sick by being naughty sometimes?" Catherine's heart shattered at the question. She pulled Charlotte closer and kissed the top of her head.
"My darling girl, no."
"This has nothing to do with anything you children have done. Sometimes people just get sick, and it is nobody's fault. You three are the most wonderful children in the world, and you bring me nothing but joy." George was trying very hard not to cry, but Catherine could see the tears he was holding back. "Will you have to go to the hospital?" he asked. "Yes, I will need to go to the hospital for treatments," Catherine admitted. "But I will come home every day that I can. And when I cannot come home, Daddy will be here with you, and Granny and Grandpa will visit more often." The conversation continued for nearly an hour. The children asked dozens of questions, some medical and some practical. They wanted to know if Catherine's hair would fall out like they had seen in movies. They asked if she would still be able to come to their school events. Louis wanted to know if he could sleep in his parents' bed every night until she got better. Catherine answered every question as honestly as she could, while still protecting their innocence. She explained that she might lose her hair, but that it would grow back. She promised to attend as many school events as possible. She agreed that Louis could sleep with her and William whenever he needed to feel close to them. When William found them an hour later, all four of them were sitting in a pile of autumn leaves, holding each other tightly. The children's faces were red from crying, but there was also something like relief in their expressions. The scary unknown had been replaced with concrete information they could understand and process. "Daddy," Louis called out when he saw William approaching. "Mummy told us about the cancer. Are you sad too?" William sat down in the leaves with them, creating a complete family circle. "Yes, I am sad," he said honestly. "But I am also proud of how brave Mummy is being and how brave all of you are being too." Charlotte looked up at her father with tear-stained cheeks. "Will you still be able to do your royal work while you take care of Mummy?" William smiled at his daughter's thoughtfulness. Even in the middle of her own fear, she was thinking about the responsibilities that came with their family's position. "I will do whatever I need to do to take care of Mummy and all of you," he said. "The royal work is important, but you are the most important things in my life." George, who had been quiet for several minutes, suddenly spoke up. "I want to help take care of Mummy too. I am old enough to help with things around the house." "Me too," Charlotte added quickly. "I can help Louis with his homework and make sure he brushes his teeth. And I can give Mummy extra hugs," Louis announced seriously. "Hugs always make people feel better." Catherine looked at her three children and felt overwhelmed by their love and determination to help her through this crisis. These beautiful, caring children were offering to give up parts of their childhood to help their mother fight cancer. It was heartbreaking and inspiring at the same time. As the sun began to set over the palace gardens, the family continued to sit together in the leaves. They made plans for how they would handle the coming months. They talked about who they would tell and when. They discussed how to maintain as much normalcy as possible in their daily routines. But most importantly, they reaffirmed their love for each other and their commitment to facing this challenge as a united family. Catherine realized that while the cancer diagnosis had brought fear and uncertainty into their lives, it had also revealed the incredible strength and love that existed within their family bond. The conversation in the garden marked the end of their time of private grief and the beginning of their journey as a family fighting together against an invisible enemy. The news of Catherine's diagnosis spread through the palace staff like wildfire. Despite William and Catherine's careful attempts to control the information, within days everyone from the head butler to the newest kitchen assistant knew that their beloved princess was fighting for her life. The atmosphere in the palace changed completely. Becoming heavy with unspoken worry and careful kindness, Mrs. Peterson, the children's longtime nanny, was one of the first staff members Catherine chose to tell personally. The older woman had been with the family since George was born. Catherine trusted her completely with the children's emotional well-being during this difficult time. Catherine found Mrs. Peterson in the children's playroom, organizing toys that Louis had scattered across the floor during his morning play session. The nanny looked up with her usual warm smile, but Catherine could see the concern in her eyes. Like Charlotte, Mrs. Peterson had noticed that something was wrong in the household. "Mrs. Peterson," Catherine began, closing the playroom door behind her, "I need to speak with you about something very important." The older woman immediately stopped what she was doing and gave Catherine her full attention. In the years they had worked together, Mrs. Peterson had become much more than an employee. She was a trusted confidant and almost like a grandmother to the children. "Of course, Your Royal Highness," Mrs. Peterson said, though her formal tone could not hide the worry in her voice. Catherine sat down on one of the small chairs around the children's table. Colorful drawings and schoolwork covering the walls suddenly seemed precious beyond measure. These were the artifacts of her children's happy childhood, and she wanted desperately to protect that happiness for as long as possible. "I have been diagnosed with cancer," Catherine said simply. She had learned that delivering this news quickly was easier than trying to ease into it gradually. Mrs. Peterson's face went pale. She reached out to grip the back of a chair for support. "Oh, my dear," she whispered. "I am so very sorry." Catherine spent the next hour explaining the diagnosis and treatment plan to Mrs. Peterson. She talked about how the children had taken the news and what kind of additional support they might need in the coming months. Mrs. Peterson listened carefully, asking practical questions about schedules and routines. The children will need extra attention and reassurance, Catherine explained. There may be days when I am too tired or sick from treatment to be fully present for them. I need to know that someone I trust completely will be there to provide stability. Mrs. Peterson nodded firmly. You can count on me completely, Your Royal Highness. Those children are like my own grandchildren. I will do whatever is needed to help them through this difficult time. As word spread through the palace staff, Catherine was touched by the outpouring of support from people who had worked quietly in the background of her life for years. The head chef began preparing special meals designed to help her maintain her strength during treatment. The head gardener started bringing fresh flowers to her private sitting room every day, knowing how much she loved having natural beauty around her. Even the security team, usually trained to maintain professional distance, began showing small gestures of care. They made sure Catherine's favorite tea was always available in her car during official engagements. They arranged for her to have extra privacy, shorter walking distances when she appeared in public. But the most touching support came from an unexpected source. James, the young footman who had only been working at the palace for 6 months, approached Catherine one morning with obvious nervousness. Your Royal Highness, he said quietly, his hands shaking slightly. I hope you do not mind me speaking to you about this, but I wanted you to know that my mother fought cancer 3 years ago. She is completely healthy now. Catherine looked at the young man's earnest face and felt her heart warm. Thank you for telling me that, James. How is your mother doing now? She is wonderful, James said, his face brightening. She says the treatment was difficult, but having family support made all the difference. She asked me to tell you that. She is praying for you, if that is appropriate for me to say. Catherine had to blink back tears at this kindness from someone she barely knew. Please tell your mother that I am very grateful for her prayers, and I am so glad she is healthy now. News of Catherine's diagnosis also brought unexpected reactions from the extended royal family. William's father called immediately to offer any support needed, including taking on additional royal duties so William could focus on his family. The Queen, despite her own health challenges, insisted on visiting the children personally to reassure them of their family's love and support. Catherine's own parents were devastated by the news. Her mother arrived at the palace within hours of receiving William's phone call, her eyes red from crying, but her expression determined to help in any way possible. Her father, usually a man of few words, simply hugged Catherine tightly and whispered that he loved her. We are going to move into the guest quarters, Catherine's mother announced. I know you value your privacy, but the children need their grandparents close by during this time, and you need people who can help without asking questions. Catherine felt enormous relief at this offer. Having her parents nearby would provide emotional support for everyone in the family, and she knew they would help maintain normal routines for the children when she was having difficult days. The hardest part of sharing the news was making the decision about when and how to tell the public. As a member of the royal family, Catherine's health was considered a matter of public interest. The palace communications team needed time to prepare statements and manage media coverage. But Catherine wanted to maintain as much privacy as possible for her family. William spent hours in meetings with palace officials, trying to balance transparency with privacy. They decided to wait until after Catherine had met with her medical team and developed a treatment plan before making any public announcements. This would allow them to provide concrete information about her condition and prognosis, rather than leaving room for speculation and rumors. Meanwhile, Catherine tried to maintain as much normalcy as possible in her daily routine. She continued with some of her royal engagements, though fewer than usual. She still helped the children with their homework and read bedtime stories when she felt well enough. She wanted them to see that while things were different, the core of their family life remained stable, but there were moments when the weight of everything became overwhelming. One evening, Catherine found herself sitting in the palace chapel, staring at the beautiful stained glass windows and trying to find peace in the quiet space. She had never been an extremely religious person, but something about the sacred atmosphere brought her comfort. William found her there an hour later, sitting in the front pew with tears streaming down her face. He sat beside her without speaking, and they shared the silence together. Sometimes Catherine realized the most important support came not from words or actions, but simply from having someone willing to sit with you in your fear and sadness. "I keep thinking about all the things I might miss," Catherine finally whispered. George's graduation, Charlotte's wedding, Louis learning to drive, all the moments that make up a life. William took her hand in his. "You are not going to miss those things," he said firmly. "We are going to fight this together, and you are going to be there for every important moment in our children's lives." Catherine wanted to believe him, but the fear remained a constant presence in her heart. Still, sitting in that peaceful chapel, with her husband beside her, she felt a small spark of hope beginning to grow. Whatever happened, she would not face this battle alone. The first day of Catherine's treatment arrived with an unseasonably cold morning in late October. She woke up before dawn, unable to sleep due to the anxiety that had been building in her chest for days. William was already awake beside her, staring at the ceiling with the same worried expression he had worn to bed the night before. Neither of them spoke at first. The weight of what this day represented seemed too heavy for words. Today would mark the beginning of Catherine's fight against the cancer that was trying to steal her future with her family. It would also be the first day that the children would have to face the reality of their mother's illness in a concrete way. Catherine had arranged for her treatment to begin early in the morning, hoping to return home before the children finished school. She wanted to maintain the illusion of normalcy for as long as possible. The medical team had agreed to come to a private clinic near the palace, understanding the need for security and discretion. As Catherine got dressed, she found herself looking at her reflection more carefully than usual. Her hair was still thick and shiny. Her skin still had its natural glow. By the end of the day, the medicines that would hopefully save her life would begin changing her body in ways that would be visible to everyone around her. William helped her choose what to wear, settling on a simple blue dress that had always been one of his favorites. "You look beautiful," he said softly, fastening the necklace she wore to their wedding around her neck. "You will always look beautiful to me." Catherine managed a small smile. "Even when I am bald and sick from the medicine, especially then," William replied seriously. "Because then I will know how brave and strong you are." The drive to the clinic was quiet, except for the soft sound of classical music playing through the car speakers. Catherine held William's hand tightly, drawing strength from his steady presence. She watched the familiar London streets pass by, the window wondering how many more mornings she would be able to take this kind of journey. Dr. Harrison met them at the clinic entrance, along with Dr. Mitchell, the oncologist who would be leading Catherine's treatment team. Dr. Mitchell was a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and a confident manner that immediately made Catherine feel more hopeful about her chances. "Good morning, Catherine," Dr. Mitchell said warmly, using her first name rather than her royal title. "I know this is a frightening day for you, but I want you to know that we have an excellent treatment plan, and I have every reason to believe we can beat this cancer." The medical team had prepared a private treatment room that looked more like a comfortable living room than a hospital space. There were soft chairs, warm lighting, and even some of Catherine's favorite flowers arranged in vases around the room. William would be able to stay with her during the entire treatment session. As the nurses prepared Catherine's intravenous line, she tried to focus on anything other than what was happening to her body. She thought about George's soccer game that afternoon, which she was determined to attend despite how she might feel after treatment. She pictured Charlotte's face that morning at breakfast, full of concern, but trying to be brave for her mother's sake. She remembered Louis climbing into bed with her and William the night before, wanting to sleep close to his parents. The chemotherapy drugs looked so ordinary as they dripped slowly into her bloodstream. The liquid was clear, almost like water. But Catherine knew it contained powerful chemicals that would hopefully destroy the cancer cells trying to take over her body. It seemed impossible that something that looked so harmless could make her feel so sick. William sat beside her bed, reading aloud from a book of poetry they had both loved at university. His voice was steady and soothing, creating a bubble of normalcy around them, despite the medical equipment and clinical setting. Sometimes he would pause to make a joke or share a memory connected to a particular poem, making Catherine smile despite her fear. About halfway through the treatment, Catherine began to feel the first effects of the medicine. A wave of nausea washed over her, followed by a strange metallic taste in her mouth. Dr. Mitchell had warned her about these side effects, but experiencing them was still unsettling. "It is normal," the nurse assured her, adjusting something on the intravenous pump. "The anti-nausea medicine will help, but you may feel uncomfortable for the rest of the day." Catherine nodded, not trusting herself to speak without being sick. William moved closer and held a cool cloth to her forehead, the same way she had done for the children when they had fevers. The role reversal made her feel vulnerable in a way she had never experienced before. As the hours passed, Catherine found herself thinking about all the other people around the world who were sitting in similar rooms, fighting similar battles. She thought about James, the footman's mother, who had survived her cancer treatment and was now healthy again. She tried to draw strength from the knowledge that millions of people had walked this path before her and emerged victorious. When the treatment finally ended, Catherine felt exhausted in a way she had never experienced before. It was not just physical tiredness, but an emotional and spiritual weariness that seemed to reach into her bones. The nurses helped her sit up slowly, warning her to move carefully as the medicines might make her dizzy. "How do you feel, doctor?" Mitchell asked, checking Catherine's vital signs one more time. "Like I have been hit by a truck," Catherine admitted weakly, but also strangely hopeful. "Does that make sense?" Dr. Mitchell smiled. "Perfect sense. You have just taken the first step in your fight against this disease. Your body is responding exactly as we expected, which is very encouraging." The drive home felt longer than the morning journey to the clinic. Catherine rested her head against William's shoulder, trying to ignore the queasiness in her stomach. She was determined to be present for the children when they returned from school, even if she could not hide how tired she felt. When they arrived at the palace, Catherine's mother was waiting in the entrance hall with a worried expression. She had been pacing anxiously all morning, unable to concentrate on anything other than her daughter's first treatment. "How are you?" "Feeling, darling?" her mother asked gently, helping Catherine out of her coat. "Tired and sick, but glad it is over," Catherine replied honestly. "At least for today." Catherine's father appeared from the sitting room, carrying a tray with her favorite tea and some plain biscuits. "The children have been asking about you all day," he said softly. "Mrs. Peterson says they could barely concentrate on their lessons." Catherine managed to drink half a cup of tea before the nausea became too overwhelming. William helped her upstairs to their bedroom, where she could rest until the children came home. She lay down on top of the covers, still wearing her blue dress, and closed her eyes, but sleep would not come. Every time Catherine started to drift off, she would feel another wave of sickness or remember something frightening that Dr. Mitchell had mentioned about potential side effects. Her mind raced with worries about how the treatment would affect her ability to care for her children and fulfill her royal duties. William sat in the chair beside their bed, working quietly on his laptop but glancing up at Catherine every few minutes to check on her. His constant presence was comforting, but she also felt guilty that he was sacrificing his own responsibilities to take care of her. "Do not have to stay here," Catherine whispered. "I know you have important meetings." "This afternoon?" "There is nothing more important than being here with you," William replied firmly. "The meetings can wait. My staff understands." At 3 o'clock, they heard the familiar sounds of the children returning from school. Catherine could distinguish each child's voice in the hallway below. George was telling Charlotte about something that had happened in his history class. Charlotte was arguing with Louis about whose turn it was to choose the afternoon snack. Louis was making the sound effects for some imaginary adventure game. These normal childhood sounds filled Catherine with both joy and sadness. She was grateful that her children still felt secure enough to be silly and carefree. But she also worried about how long that innocence would last as her illness progressed. Mrs. Peterson knocked gently on the bedroom door. "The children are asking to see you," she said quietly. "But I can tell them you are resting if you prefer." Catherine struggled to sit up, despite feeling dizzy from the movement. "No, please send them up. I want to see them." The children appeared in the doorway. Cautiously, as if they were not sure whether they were allowed to enter, Catherine could see the concern in their faces as they noticed how pale and tired she looked. "Mummy, how was your treatment?" Charlotte asked, approaching the bed slowly. "It was exactly what the doctors expected," Catherine said, trying to sound more energetic than she felt. "The medicine is working to fight the bad cells in my body, but it makes me feel sick while it does its job." Louis climbed carefully onto the bed beside his mother, being extra gentle in a way that broke Catherine's heart. At 6 years old, he was trying so hard to be a good boy and not cause any additional worry for his parents. "Does it hurt?" he asked in a small voice. "Not exactly hurt," Catherine explained. "More like having the flu. I feel tired and my stomach is upset, but it will get better in a few days." George stood at the foot of the bed, studying his mother's face with the serious expression he had inherited from William. "Will you have to do this treatment many times?" "Yes," Catherine admitted. "I will need to go back to the clinic every few weeks for several months, but each treatment brings me closer to being completely healthy again." The children stayed with Catherine for about an hour, telling her about their day at school and showing her their homework assignments. Their chatter and laughter filled the room with warmth, making Catherine feel stronger despite her physical weakness. As evening approached, Catherine realized that she had survived her first day of treatment. It had been difficult and frightening, but she had made it through with the support of her family around her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight she was home with the people she loved most in the world. William helped her change into comfortable pajamas and brought her more tea and toast. The children took turns giving her gentle goodnight. Hugs before Mrs. Peterson took them to their own rooms for bedtime routines. Lying in bed that night, Catherine felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and determination. The cancer treatment had begun, and there was no turning back now. She was committed to this fight, not just for herself, but for every person who loved her and needed her to survive. The battle was just beginning, but Catherine was no longer facing it with fear alone. She had hope, love, and the fierce determination of a mother who refused to leave her children behind. 3 months into Catherine's treatment, the palace had become a different place entirely. The formal routines that once governed royal life had been replaced by a gentler rhythm centered around Catherine's good days and difficult days. Everyone in the household had learned to read the subtle signs that indicated whether she was feeling strong enough for visitors or needed complete rest and quiet. On this particular December morning, snow was falling softly outside the windows, creating a peaceful white blanket over the palace gardens. Catherine sat in her favorite chair by the window, wrapped in a cashmere blanket that William had bought specifically for her treatment days. Her hair had begun to thin noticeably, and she wore a soft knit hat that Charlotte had chosen for her. During a shopping trip the week before, the children had adapted to their mother's illness in ways that were both heartbreaking and inspiring. George had become incredibly protective, often checking on Catherine between his school lessons and helping her with small tasks around their private apartments. Charlotte had appointed herself as Catherine's personal assistant, keeping track of medication schedules and treatment appointments with the efficiency of a royal secretary. Louis had developed the habit of bringing his mother small gifts throughout the day: flowers from the garden, drawings from art class, or interesting rocks he found during walks with his security detail. Today was supposed to be a good day. Catherine had completed her treatment session 2 days earlier, and the worst of the side effects had passed. She was expecting a visit from her closest friend Sarah, who was coming to help her prepare for the public statement she would need to make about her progress. The decision to share more details about her illness with the public had been difficult. Initially, Catherine and William had released only basic information about her diagnosis and treatment plan. But as her condition became more visible and affected her royal duties, they realized that transparency would be better than allowing rumors and speculation to spread. William found Catherine in her chair by the window, staring thoughtfully at the falling snow. He had just returned from a meeting with their communications team, where they had finalized the details of Catherine's upcoming statement. "How are you feeling about this afternoon?" he asked gently, sitting down in the chair beside hers. Catherine turned to look at her husband, noting the worry lines that had appeared around his eyes over the past few months. The stress of watching her suffer while trying to maintain his own royal responsibilities had aged him visibly. She felt guilty about the burden her illness had placed on his shoulders. "Nervous," she admitted. "I know that people care about me and want to know how I am doing, but it feels strange to discuss something so personal with the entire world." William reached over and took her hand. "You do not have to share more than you are comfortable with. You can keep the statement very general if you prefer." Catherine shook her head. "No, I think people deserve to know the truth. There are probably many families dealing with similar situations who might find comfort in knowing they are not alone." When Sarah arrived that afternoon, she brought with her an energy and warmth that immediately lifted Catherine's spirits. The two women had been friends since university, and Sarah had a gift for making Catherine laugh even during the darkest moments of her treatment. "You look much better than I expected," Sarah said honestly, settling into a chair across from Catherine. "The pictures in the newspapers made me worry that you were feeling worse than you actually are." Catherine smiled. "The newspapers always choose the most unflattering photographs they can find. I think they enjoy making me look as sick as possible." Spent an hour working on the statement, with Sarah helping Catherine find words that were honest but not overly detailed. They wanted to convey Catherine's gratitude for the public's support, while also explaining why she had needed to reduce her royal engagements. As they worked, the children began arriving home from their various activities. George came in first. Still wearing his soccer uniform and covered in mud from practice, he had scored 2 goals that afternoon and was excited to share the news with his mother. "Mummy, did you see the game?" he asked hopefully. Catherine had been planning to attend, but a morning wave of nausea had made it impossible for her to leave the palace. "I am sorry I missed it, darling," Catherine said, feeling the familiar pang of guilt that came whenever her illness prevented her from being present for important moments in her children's lives. "But I heard from Daddy that you played brilliantly." George's face fell slightly, but he quickly recovered and launched into an animated description of both goals. Catherine listened with genuine interest, asking questions about his teammates and the opposing team's strategy. She had learned that focusing completely on her children's experiences helped distract her from her own physical discomfort. Charlotte appeared next, carrying a large art project that she had been working on for several weeks. It was a painting of the entire family standing together in the palace gardens, with bright flowers blooming all around them. In the painting, Catherine looked healthy and happy, her hair long and shining in the sunlight. "It is beautiful, sweetheart," Catherine said, studying the careful details Charlotte had included. "You made me look much prettier than I actually am." "You always look pretty to me," Charlotte replied seriously. "Even when you wear the hat because your hair is getting thin." Bounded into the room last, full of energy from his afternoon playing with the palace dogs. He climbed immediately into Catherine's lap, not caring that she was in the middle of an important conversation with Sarah. At 6 years old, he still needed constant physical affection from his mother, and Catherine was grateful that the treatment had not changed his need for cuddles. "Mummy, Mrs. Peterson says, we can make Christmas cookies tomorrow if you feel well enough," Louis announced. "Can we make the ones shaped like stars?" Catherine looked at her youngest child's hopeful face and felt her heart squeeze with love. Christmas was only 3 weeks away, and she was determined to make it as normal and joyful as possible for the children despite her ongoing treatment. "Of course, we can make star cookies," she promised. "And we can make trees and bells and any other shapes you want." As the afternoon progressed, Catherine found herself surrounded by the people who mattered most to her. William had joined them after finishing his meetings, and Catherine's parents had arrived for their daily visit. The room filled with conversation and laughter, creating the kind of warm family atmosphere that had always been Catherine's favorite. Part of Palace's life, Sarah stayed for dinner, and afterward, she helped Catherine record a short video message that would be released along with the written statement. In the video, Catherine looked directly into the camera and spoke from her heart about the kindness she had received from people around the world. "I want everyone to know how grateful I am for the letters, cards, and prayers that have been sent to me and my family," Catherine said. "Your support has given me strength during the most difficult days of my treatment. While I am still fighting this illness, I am surrounded by love, and that makes all the difference. After Sarah left and the children had gone to bed, Catherine and William sat together in their private sitting room. The palace was quiet around them, with only the soft sound of snow continuing to fall outside their windows. "Do you think we made the right decision about being so open with the public?" Catherine asked. William considered the question carefully. "I think you were brave to share your experience. There are probably thousands of families who are dealing with similar challenges, and knowing that even a princess can face cancer might help them feel less alone." Catherine leaned against William's shoulder, feeling the exhaustion that always came at the end of her better days. "Sometimes I wonder, what would have happened if I had never gotten sick? Would we have continued taking our time together for granted?" "Probably," William admitted honestly. "But I do not want to think about that now. What matters is that we are here together, and we are fighting this together." As they prepared for bed, Catherine caught sight of herself in the mirror above their dresser. Her face was thinner than it had been 6 months ago, and the hat she wore to cover her thinning hair made her look fragile. But her eyes still held the determination that had carried her through the worst moments of her treatment. Tomorrow would bring another day of uncertainty, another step in her long journey toward recovery. But tonight, she was surrounded by love, and she was still fighting. For Catherine, in this moment, that was enough.